Present hard to look at, the future hard to see. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Alaa Safi is a Palestinian living here in the UK. Her entire family, her parents and siblings, their children as well, are in Gaza. Her 7-year-old nephew Waseem was killed by an Israeli airstrike, and his father, Husam's body, has not yet been recovered. I'm pleased to say that Alaa joins us, and we do appreciate at what is such a traumatic time for you and your family that you are taking the time to talk to us, Alaa.
No, thank you so much for me.
Can you tell us what happened with Waseem?
Waseem went for a night to spend the night with his father and his father's family, and in the morning, in the early hours, we heard that a bombing happened directly where they fled to, in Husam's family house, and most of the family members have been lost, and Waseem's body was one of the first bodies to be recovered.
Tell us about Waseem. I know it means handsome in English.
Yeah, it means handsome, and he's a very handsome boy.
We can see pictures of him now. He really is.
Yeah, and he's a very gentle and lovely boy. He has been loved and adored by all the family and will be loved and remembered for the rest of our lives. And he's a very smart, very switched on boy, and he's very good in his chess. He won a competition in chess recently, an engineering competition. He was so worried that he would lose their home, because he didn't want to lose his medal and his cup that he won. He's been, in maths, he's been able to solve it so quickly. We've been incredibly impressed by him, and we had so many hopes for him and his future. And I was really looking forward to seeing him go to school, go to university, and be an amazing person, being an amazing engineer like his dad.
I'm so sorry, Alaa. And your poor sister, how is she?
She's trying to go back day by day. I think with the truce, it gave her a little bit of a break, but I think with hearing that it might go back to how it was with constant bombing is not very comforting, and it doesn't give space for grief for anyone.
And your brother as well, it was his responsibility, I know, to carry Waseem home.
My brother is definitely very, very devastated, because he had to look through the body bags until he found Waseem and had to carry him all the way home to my sister. And what he said to me is that my heart is broken to pieces. And in that very night, his daughter survived only by luck. One of the bombing resulted in the window falling and the glass shattering on her mattress, but luckily she moved through the night to be next to her father. And her father just had a breakdown that night, that we don't want more children of our family or of any family to keep on being killed like that.
And Alaa, you mentioned that there has been no space for people to grieve. But what has happened in these past few days when there's been a pause in fighting? Has this been an opportunity, in a way, for people to reflect on how the past few weeks have been?
I think a little bit, but I think they're more holding their breath that it's not going to continue. My family, we've lost our family home, and my family, because we live in the north, most of the family members live in the north. We haven't been able to go back, check on what's left, what's gone, or anything. So we still we're hopeful some of what we have is still standing. I think for my sister, she hasn't been able to go out or enjoy the truce because of her immense grief. But I think people are just worn out by the 48 days of fighting and just waiting on the news, whether it's going to turn into a truce or into a ceasefire or not.
And Alaa, in terms of the absolute basics of daily life, how have your family coped? Have they managed to have, for instance, sort of fresh water and food?
My family have managed to get the basics. So where they were able to get it, they got flour and rice and the basics. They had to turn the bread making machine into, they had to open it and make it into like a wooden fire thing so they can bake bread. Um, the pictures that I've seen from them is something that I never imagined, but they're doing their best to survive and finding ways. But the the prices for everything have doubled and tripled, and they're having to buy seawater to have showers in, which to me is so ridiculous. When they had no internet to contact me and to say that they're okay, they would go to a shop and hire internet for 5 minutes and pay for it.
How has that been for you every day? Do you have a set time that you try and talk to them? And when they don't have internet, that must be so worrying.
It's it's really, really stressful, and it's really hard to go on by normal life, go to work, and knowing that they're not safe, knowing that they didn't sleep, knowing that they're in constant danger. But we had to sort of find different ways, like buying eSAM to see if it's going to work. And my sister managed to find a certain corner in the house where she might have some coverage. And once she's able to get that, she would call me, or try to reach someone who could reach me. So we've managed to find ways. There were times where we lost contact for 2, 3 days, which was really, really difficult for me and very stressful, especially after what happened with Waseem. I can't stand not hearing from them for a few hours.
I can absolutely imagine that. And we have spoken to some people in Gaza who say one of the best things about this pause is that they've been able to get some sleep because for the first time it's a little bit quiet. But is there some sort of preparations taking place for what could happen next? I mean, we don't know what will happen next, but what are people imagining?
I think people are, as I said before, like holding their breath. They're not sure. I think people want to go back to their homes in the north and see what's going to happen. And we lost our home. So in the meantime, I don't know how the near future will look like. And I would like to think that more building work will happen and more funding will go into that. But I think above all else, the reason why I'm talking about Wasim and want to the world to hear his story is to highlight how important it is to provide more protections for children in Gaza and in Palestine in general, and to emphasize how important it is that, the international law and, human rights law applies to people in Gaza to make sure that these atrocities don't continue to happen. And that's all I want for our future, for people in Gaza to be able to heal, to reconnect with the world. And I think knowing how trauma works, as a therapist, I know that it's incredibly isolating for people. And I think for Gaza, we'll need a lot of healing to do, not just rebuilding of buildings, but rebuilding of their connections with the world that has watched their suffering for 48 hours. And people in Gaza, my family and other families have increasingly felt that the world hasn't been able to do anything for them. And I think it's important to do something about that.
And Alaa, we can hear your incredible pain and the grief that you must be going through, but also your empathy, which seems vast. And you mentioned that you're a therapist and work with people as well. There is so much pain around the world watching what is going on in the region. What do you say to people here when you say you are still working? How do you deal not only with your pain and your grief, but what advice do you give to other people to help them cope?
I think people need to sometimes do as little as they can or as much as they can. And I think it's easy to forget that we have power within ourselves and resources within ourselves to make a difference. And while it might seem that none of our actions are building into any real change, eventually it will. And I think that our work is not done, and to save some of our energy for when people in Gaza need us. And I've been saving my energy so I'm ready when people are ready to have therapy in Gaza, that I'm ready for them. And I think that people need to sort of find their own ways of reaching to people in Gaza and supporting them in the way that they feel is appropriate, whether that's journalists, whether that's paramedics, whether all of these people will need as much support when this is over, because as we've seen with COVID, people can operate and they need to do whatever they need to do. But when it's over, it's a lot of recovering and a lot of healing that needs to be done. And I think the support of doctors and giving advice on how to cope and being a lifeline for people there, just spread the word of what's happening, just keep switched on to the news, but also remember that it's not only about listening to the news, it's taking some action.
Alaa, your words have been remarkable and so important. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank you
very
so much
much
for
for
having me.
joining us. Thanks,
Thank you.
Alaa.